You know how good things are supposed to come in small packages? Well, they can come in medium ones too. Let me get you as excited about this as I am. Inside this package, in my opinion, is one of the best laboratory measurement devices ever made. If you ever want to log temperatures, voltages, resistances, basically anything measurable, this is what you want. This, hold on one second. This is a Fluke Netdaq, specifically the 2640A model. Yes, that's the same Fluke that makes the popular multimeters and other electrical tools. The DAQ, or DAQ in Netdaq, stands for data acquisition, basically measuring stuff. But leaving it at that would be selling it short. This box can measure and log 20 channels, where each one can measure something different, up to 100 times per second with a high level of accuracy. The device itself is deceptively plain. It only has 8 buttons on the front, which are rarely used, and around back, while it looks like it has a lot of junk in the trunk, there's only 3 things you really need. The power supply connection, for obvious reasons, an Ethernet jack, because as you may have guessed, this needs a computer to do its thing, and a slot for the card where you connect all your inputs. The card, or universal input module as Fluke calls it, itself isn't anything magical. It just makes it easier to connect all your inputs to the DAQ by providing 20 pairs of convenient screw terminals. Here you can see the inputs 1 to 20. There are some other components inside, but I believe primarily the card just adapts the screw terminals to the big header that mates with the DAQ. I have it on good authority that the piece on the bottom is a strain relief. Let's perform a simple experiment so you can see this system in action. In input 2, I'll put in some thermocouple wire. Yellow in H for high, or the positive, and red in L for low, or negative. In input 1, I'll attach some black and red wire that I'm going to use to measure voltage. Let's plop that card in, add power, and Ethernet. The red and black wires are just connected to a rechargeable AA battery. The thermocouple wire is twisted together and expertly taped to a light bulb. The idea here is to record the voltage of the battery and measure the temperature of the bulb as they're connected together. The software I'm going to use to connect the DAQ is called Netdaq Logger, from 1996, which is why it needs to run on Windows XP. Fluke does have newer software which works with older Netdaqs like mine, but, and don't tell Fluke I said this, but I don't think it's actually any better, which is quite amusing. I'm going to skip the detailed setup, but you can see here that I have channel 1 set to DC voltage and channel 2 to thermocouple measurement. I have the measurements happen every half of a second. Now to press play, and let's look at the data coming in. The last measured values are shown below, and the data is being plotted in real time above. The top blue line is the voltage, and the bottom green one is temperature. It may look like there's a lot of fluctuation, but it's just because the scale is really zoomed in. Now let's plug in that bulb and see what happens. Right away you can see the battery voltage drops from 1.3 to about 1 volt. The temperature at the bulb has also started climbing. I have the auto scale feature turned on, so the maximums and minimums of the chart are changing to fit the data. Let's turn off that bulb now. The voltage quickly returns to about 1.3 and the temperature stops increasing. Okay, let's stop the scans and have a closer look at the data. I'll make both plots span the entire chart height and set the scale manually to fit the data better. Now you can see some more details, like the voltage slightly decreasing while the bulb was turned on, and the voltage bounce back profile after the bulb was turned off. Also, you can see the temperature increase continues slightly after the bulb was turned off due to thermal inertia. And this dip is because I blew air on the bulb to see if it would cool faster. Unless you're specifically interested to look at a transient in detail, like this voltage recovery, the sample rate of 0.5 seconds is probably too quick. You'll end up with a lot of data to process without adding value. Speaking of which, you can actually extract all the data in CSV format for further processing. One last thing. I don't want to go too deep into the software, but I think it's worth showing all the possible functions that you can set for each channel. So, why do I like this DAQ so much? To start off with, this thing was only $185 all in, which, considering I've bought these new closer to $5,000, is a heck of a bargain. There's no shortage of these on popular e-commerce sites, and many, like this one, are in great condition. Fluke does make new DAC models, like the 2638A. However, you'll have to pay an arm and a leg for one. Sure, they're flashier with their color touchscreens, and it's nice you don't have to run them off a computer if you don't want to. But for the hobbyist, the enthusiast, that's a lot to fork out. This instrument is robust, reliable, and this may be subjective, but I think it's easy to use. Aside from choosing what each channel is measuring and some test parameters, there's not much you need to do to get it working. I've seen these Pis and Arduinos used by DIYers for data recording, and there's one main reason I don't. They're not plug and play. You need to program them to do what you want, like what they should measure and how, also whether the output is a data file, a graph, or something else. Someone could probably put together some code that resembles the Fluke software. Maybe even something like this exists already. I don't know. But what I do know is I'm not a software guy. To me, that's all voodoo rocket brain surgery. I'm sure programming one of these to be better than the current Fluke software wouldn't be that hard for some, but it is for me. On a side note, if you can program well, I would encourage you to send your resume to Fluke. I think they could use some help with their software. Also, the Pi by itself can't measure most things, like voltage, current, and temperatures. It only has digital inputs. You need to add more circuits, like this one, to give it those capabilities. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I think there are some people who could really find this instrument useful, but don't know about it. If that's you, I would encourage you to give it a try. If you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. I'm planning on putting this thing to work on some interesting projects in the future, so stay tuned. And thanks for watching.